Welcome, come on in, everybody. Great to see you again. Great to see you again. Yeah. Come on in. Welcome, everybody. This is my wife, Margaret. This is Gail. And Sian, who wrote to you. This is Avina, who chairs the welfare committee. This is Gwen. And this is Cliff, our club secretary.
I'm going to officiate you.
Good.
You hold that and name here, please. And in the corresponding box, the group or organization you represent in this case.
Lesbians and gays support the miners.
Yeah, quite absolutely.
And that's a clip from Pride. I'm delighted to say that Bill Nighy, one of the stars of the movie, is with us. Hello, Bill. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Nice to be here. Good afternoon.
Enjoyed Pride very much, and it's enjoyable on a whole number of different levels. And let's go work through the different levels as we go through. Just tell us about Cliff. Tell us about where he fits into the story.
I play Cliff, and don't laugh, he's a miner. I found it difficult when I was preparing for this film, people say, what are you doing currently? I say, I'm in this film about the miners' strike. And they say, what are you playing? And then I could never just say, I'm playing a miner. And when I did say I'm playing a miner, they looked at me funny. But he's
why did you think that was?
Well, because I don't know. I just don't, because physically I'm not probably what leaps into your mind when you think about a miner.
You've been a rock god.
I've been a rock god, quite. I've been a squid. So why not, But anyway, but he's a very nice, decent man who was active in the, as you would imagine, during the miners' strike. He had a great enthusiasm, literary enthusiasm, and he was very well read. There were huge libraries provided by the Miners' Union there have been since the 1920s, which is very impressive. But he's a quiet, reserved, decent man, and he was also active in the sense of bringing the two groups together. He was one of the people that didn't resist the idea of because in 1984, when the Lesbian and Gays Support the Miners group turned up at the Welfare Club in Oncloyne, not far from Swansea, it wasn't an unambiguous, it wasn't an uncomplicated welcome. There was some reservations, so Cliff was part of. It went some way towards trying to bridge that gap.
So the whole story is, as you mentioned, this lesbian and gay group who decide to raise money. For the striking miners, and money that isn't actually welcome.
Well,
to start with, anyway.
No, quite not to start with. It's a true story. Everything in the movie is true. There was a bunch of gay men, and they had one lesbian called Steph. So they called themselves the Lesbian and Gays Support the Miners group, and they went out and raised some money. And then they phoned the Miners' Union and tried to give them the money. And I don't know whether they got as far as lesbian or gay in 1984 in Britain, but no one would take the call. So they thought, well, we better take it down there. One of them was Welsh, so they thought, well, we'll take it down. They selected this village where we shot most of the film, in Oncloyne. And they went down there, and their welcome wasn't quite as any much better down there. But they became the story. It goes through, and it's a very it's a story that nobody seemed to know apart from the man who wrote the film. They became the second biggest fundraisers for the miners during the miners' strike. And when I went down to take my iPhone to record Welsh voices to try and get my accent right, and went in pubs and said, "Will you come in the car park and talk into my phone?" I met guys who had been down the pit during that period, and they said, they were that lot. They said those gays. They said they never missed a week. Other people came and went, and they were, and they were grateful for it, and they brought money and food parcels because they were starving at this point during the strike. He said, but those gays, they never missed a week. They were always there, which I found quite, moving because they were conscientious in that respect.
And you say the whole story is true. It is amazing. Therefore, it's taken 3 decades to get made, isn't it?
I know. It's such an extraordinary story, and such a sort of one that would be so satisfying to tell that it is amazing that it hasn't entered the language in some way. But it just hasn't. I didn't know. And when I asked around, nobody seemed to know the story, and I certainly didn't know anything about it until I read the script.
How difficult was it to get the accent?
Well, it took me a little while. There's quite a lot of different accents to choose from. It's all right saying, Welsh, but then, and the guys I recorded were all very different. And somehow I managed some kind of amalgam of them all, I suppose. And I spent some time down there, and that's the big thing. That's the thing that helps, just being surrounded by it. I'm not particularly a mimic, but I'm not bad at picking up accents if I get an opportunity to work on it. So, but being there was the thing that really helped.
I did like Cliff.
Oh,
very
good.
much.
Good.
You also have two of my favourite moments, because there are many standout moments in the film, because it's funny as well as profound and important.
The thing I would like to just, before I forget, because when we talk about this, the two subjects that are coming together and all of that, they are big, important themes, and they are sad to some degree, but it is very, very funny. And it's one of the best scripts I've ever read in my life. And when I read it, I laughed out loud from start to finish. Stephen Beresford is a very funny man on a personal level, and he can write really funny too.
I'll get to my two favourite moments then in just a moment, because we'll take that detour. But David Hare, who you've worked with for many years, said that you have a fantastic nose for good writing, and I wonder if that was the reason then you jumped for this.
Yeah, it was the reason. I read the script and just thought, I was desperate to be in it. And it's not, I've been enthusiastic about most of the things I've been in. This one, I was really, really keen to be in it. And the writing it's completely brilliant, I think. And he's pulled off something quite really difficult, which is to is to not only deal with two big themes, but also to be responsible about the historical aspect of the story, and also to make it funny. It's quite a tough, and to make it moving as well. It's very affecting, some of it. So it's true that the writing is always what draws me to anything.
Why were you so desperate?
Well,
because you must have pretty much your pick of scripts.
Well, I'm very fortunate, but there aren't many as good as this, and there aren't many great scripts, and there aren't many good scripts. Most scripts aren't any good. You are accustomed to sitting down with a script and you get halfway through and you think this is not going to make a good film. With this one, it was really, really obviously going to make a great film. There's that, but also I am very moved by both of elements that are in the movie. One, the emancipation of gay men and women, it has in my lifetime, is one of the stories that you would point to if you wanted to tell your grandchildren something, and that you were obscurely proud to have been around while they were happening. The other, you might point to the civil rights movement in America. Those were the things that on our watch, as it were, those were the developments which would fill you with pride. So there was that, and also the miners' strike, which was an enormous event in my middle years, and something that was not entirely well represented at the time, and certainly not from the point of view of the families. So I thought it presented them with great dignity and respect. So I was keen to be a part of that as well.
Because when anyone watches the film, the politics of it are writ large. You are hit over the head with a cudgel. But maybe I was thinking then later, that's the way politics was in the mid-'80s. It was, because you haven't mentioned AIDS, but the whole AIDS epidemic was starting then. Mrs. Thatcher's government, the miners' strike, these were big themes played out, and they were on the front of our television screens every day. Yeah,
and it was like a civil war, and it went on for a very long time, and It was one of the big ideas of that government, which was one of the first things they wished to address was the trade union movement. I think Margaret Thatcher, if I remember, at one point she asked the question, "What does one do when a body has cancer? One cuts the cancer from the body so that the rest of the body may thrive." And she was referring to the trade union movement, which I would suggest was one of our great contributions to human society.
The two moments that I was going to mention, two of my favourite moments, they're very kind of low-key moments. But one is your arched eyebrow. It's towards the end of the movie. It's one of the last things that you do. But someone says something to you. I'm just asking people when they go into this, look for Cliff's arched eyebrow. And the other is a non-speaking bit. One of the first things that you do is it's a glance. This is an acting masterclass, but it's very difficult to describe because there are no words. But you look at someone in a room, you look at them again, and then you walk out, and they are just wonderful.
Thank you very much.
That will get lost in the conversation because there's lots of other people to mention because you have a fantastic cast.
Oh yeah, it's a sensational cast, and everyone was very happy. And this is not PR. It was one of the best jobs I've ever had, and everyone was so happy to be there because the script was so great. Everyone was aware that we were doing something special. There were lots of young people who had never been in a film before, and they were thrilled on both levels. There were lots of young Welsh people and older Welsh people who were also very grateful that the story was being told. And you have Dominic West, Freddie Fox, Andrew Scott, Imelda Staunton, who is one of my heroes who I've worked with before, and who I just love. Just spending any time with Imelda is delicious. And
she's ferocious.
She's ferocious. She's just wonderful, Imelda. She's a rare and special woman, and a fantastic actress. There's no one that acts any better than Imelda Staunton. There are some that may act as well, but you don't need to be any more talented than Imelda Staunton.
I think, and a number of people will go and see this and say we don't see Paddy Considine enough because he puts in a fantastic.
Yeah.
He's been on the show and
course.
came in and talked about Tyrannosaur, what a great presence he is.
Fantastic, yeah. And Liz White, there's all kinds of, and Jessica Gunning, great cast, and everybody was delighted. We had a ball, and Matthew Warchus, the director, has done it. This sounds like more and more like PR, but it's not.
It does. It does a bit because I'm doing half of it.
Yes.
So I just want to mention the soundtrack as well, because you'll come out. I mean, people might be thinking, we won't talk about the conclusion of the movie, but they may well be thinking, well, it would be traditional in this kind of a movie to have a feel-good ending.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind everything that you've just said, and everyone knows how the miners' strike finished, it's difficult to have a feel-good ending, but somehow you managed it.
And it's all true. And you think, come on. Because I read it cold. I didn't know anything about it, as I say, and I didn't know what it was about. And I just read it, I knew it was written by Stephen Beresford, who's a friend of mine. But the ending is almost beggars belief. You think, come on, maybe that bit didn't happen, but that bit did happen.
Yeah.
And as you say, we won't spoil it, but it's a cracker.
Certainly worth going to see. And what is next for you, Bill? Is it Second Best Exotic? What do we see?
The Second Best Exotic, Marigold Hotel, comes out on March the 6th. And we went back to Jaipur and Udaipur with Judi Dench and Maggie Smith and Celia Emery and Penelope Wilton and everyone else. And Richard Gere came to join us to add to the cast. And it was very, very satisfying going back. And it was very satisfying going back and meet all the people, the Indian crew who'd worked on the first one. And they were so adorable. And they were very happy because we came back on a sort of roll because the first one was so well received. So I've got that, and I've just for the summer I've been doing a play by David Hare in the West End called Skylight. And we will take that to New York in the spring.
Bill Nighy, always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.